Welcome history enthusiasts to About Our World, your one-stop channel for the most intriguing historical events. From the rise and fall of civilizations to the revolutions that shaped our modern world, we cover it all. Today, we turn our gaze to a chapter that still echoes in our collective memory, World War II. This monumental event redefined the course of the 20th century, and its ripple effects continue to shape our present. Now, buckle up as we delve into the most destructive conflict in human history, World War II. Our story begins in the early 1930s, a period of political instability and economic turmoil. The world, still nursing the wounds of the Great War, was grappling with the consequences of the Treaty of Versailles. This treaty, intended to ensure peace, ironically planted seeds for another war. In the midst of this discontent, two ideologies began to rise: Fascism in Italy under Benito Mussolini and Nazism in Germany led by Adolf Hitler. Both leaders exploited the common people's anger and frustration, promising them a return to national glory. While the world watched, the storm was brewing. The final straw came in September 1939, when Germany invaded Poland, defying the treaty's terms and ignoring international pleas for restraint. This blatant act of aggression marked the ignition point of what would become the deadliest conflict in human history. This series of events set the stage for the world to be plunged into a global conflict. The world watched in trepidation as Germany invaded Poland on September 1st, 1939. Just like the falling of dominoes, this act of aggression triggered a series of events that led to the largest global conflict in history, World War II. The nations of the world quickly formed two major alliances. On one side stood the Axis powers, spearheaded by Germany, Italy, and Japan, united by their shared goal of territorial expansion. On the other side were the Allies, initially made up of the United Kingdom, France, and China, later joined by the United States and the Soviet Union. These nations were determined to halt the Axis's aggressive expansion and maintain international peace and security. The war was not confined to one region. It was a global conflict that saw major battles taking place across Europe, Africa, and Asia. In the early years of the war, the Axis powers were on the offensive, with Germany leading the charge in Europe. The Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War, was a military tactic employed by Germany, characterized by swift, concentrated attacks intended to quickly overwhelm the enemy. This strategy led to the fall of multiple European countries, including Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, and France. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, Japan was expanding its empire, invading China and Southeast Asia. This led to major battles such as the Battle of Midway, where the tides began to turn in favor of the Allies. Yet despite these early victories, the Axis powers were spreading themselves thin, fighting on multiple fronts and against numerous enemies. This overextension would eventually contribute to their downfall. By the end of 1941, the world was fully engulfed in war, with major battles happening on multiple fronts. This was not just a war of nations, but a war of ideologies, and the stakes could not have been higher. The world held its breath, uncertain of what the future would bring, as the greatest conflict in human history raged on. The years 1942 to 1944 were characterized by significant turning points. A series of pivotal events during this period began to shift the scales in favor of the Allies. The Battle of Stalingrad, which spanned from August 1942 to February 1943, was a brutal face-off between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany for control of the city of Stalingrad in southern Russia. This battle is often regarded as one of the single largest and bloodiest battles in the history of warfare. The heavy losses inflicted upon the German army made it a significant turning point in the whole of World War II. The unforgiving Russian winter and fierce Soviet resistance led to a catastrophic defeat for the Germans, marking the start of a series of setbacks for the Axis powers. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the United States, initially hesitant to join the war, had a change of heart following the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941. The entry of the United States into the war in 1942 was a game changer. With its industrial strength and abundant resources, America was able to provide a significant boost to the Allied war effort. Fast forward to 1944, and we find ourselves on the beaches of Normandy, France, on what is now known as D-Day. The massive and successful invasion by the Allies marked another turning point, opening a new front against the Axis powers in Western Europe and paving the way for their eventual defeat. The same year saw the intensification of the Pacific War. The United States and its allies began to push back against Japanese advances, leading to brutal island-hopping campaigns and fierce naval battles. These events marked a turning point in the war, setting the stage for the Axis powers' downfall. The tide had turned, and the end was, although not immediately apparent, in sight. In 1945, the tide had decisively turned against the Axis powers. The final days of the war were marked by desperation and chaos as the Allies advanced on several fronts, closing in on Germany and Japan. In the Pacific, the war reached its climax with a display of power that the world had never seen before. The United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, causing unimaginable devastation. The bombs, codenamed Little Boy and Fat Man, killed hundreds of thousands of people and led to Japan's unconditional surrender. Meanwhile, in Europe, the fall of Berlin was imminent. After a brutal battle, Soviet forces eventually captured the city, marking the end of the Third Reich's reign. Adolf Hitler, the man who had plunged the world into the deadliest conflict in human history, met his end in a bunker beneath the ruins of his capital. The final act of the war took place aboard the USS Missouri, anchored in Tokyo Bay. Representatives of the Japanese government and the Allied powers gathered to sign the Instrument of Surrender, officially marking the end of World War II. The war had taken a tremendous toll, leaving millions dead and countless others scarred by the horrors they had witnessed. Thus, on September 2, 1945, World War II officially came to an end, leaving a world forever changed. World War II, a conflict that spanned 6 years and involved over 30 countries, ended, leaving an indelible mark on history. We journeyed from its prelude through the tides turning to the aftermath. That's it for today's episode on About Our World. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more enlightening historical content. Until next time, keep exploring history.